Should we talk about the before times?
Yeah, let's talk about the before time.
Yeah.
Well, let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Deb Kinney. I'm part of Media Services, and this is all of Media Services at Duke, the three of us.
I'm Jeff Chilcott. I'm the educational technologist.
And I'm Miguel Bordo. I'm the Media Services Manager. Duke Law was one of those schools that kind of held out on doing kind of any online classes, online education. And so we really, I think, came in as a law school unprepared for making the transition from the before times of classroom teaching, Socratic method, and teaching in the round, to having to do this, what we're doing.
Not only that, but it seemed to me when I first got there over a year ago that distance education was kind of off the books, wasn't even something to, we had guest speakers come in. I mean, we have how many classrooms? What is it, 13?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And they're all prepped and ready for Zooms and video conferences, and we would occasionally have to bring guest speakers in. And we had a few power users that were using Zoom the semester before, or I guess in the spring or the fall or the spring before we left, that I remember.
Yeah, I mean, the only other times that I think we did any kind of distance education was when Neil Siegel hosted. It was a like a 6-week course with
in
judges in Ghana, and that was really our first foray into it, to do it consistently. Yeah, so. As you guys all know, we at Duke had WebEx and Zoom as options. But over the last year or so, we had a pilot about a year ago of working in Zoom, which we were a part of. And Deb was, one of those administrators on that as well. It became clear that Zoom would be our preference, and was really the preference for all of Duke University, for ease of use and so we didn't have all the answers, and I don't think that we really had the type of familiarity that we wanted, but I think we were able to kind of handle the basics.
Sure. Yeah, I think that we certainly didn't have all the answers. We had all the options afforded to us as far as using Zoom or WebEx or whatever it was that the faculty wanted to use. But, I think as we got into it, we realized that as we started to state that Zoom was the preferred choice, that there were things about Zoom that I think none of us could have anticipated at that point, because the way that we were using it up until that point was for that ease of use, and the security concerns had not come, to a head at that point. So it was, very much an issue once we got rolling.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting too that when we were starting to think about this, it was, and when we had discussions kind of with the administration and with Wayne, we had, I think, a day or two before spring break was going to start. And I remember that we were all talking as a group about, well, once we get into spring break, that Monday, what are we going to do? And I think initially, I think we had suggested, well, we were just going to do 3 sessions a day for Zoom and have faculty come in during spring break, which, some faculty weren't going to be around. but we had to act fast because unlike the university, which was pushing the spring break another week, we were actually going to start that Monday after spring break. So we didn't have a whole lot of time. You know, the university had that extra week to kind of get people prepared and at least get them, you know, familiar enough with Zoom. But like, what do you guys remember about that?
Well,
it seems so long ago.
Yeah. So I think if we step back a second, Duke was really well placed because we had Zoom in place. You know, that year that we had the pilot, we could have easily said, no, Duke isn't going to jump in bed with Zoom and we're going to stick with WebEx. But because we did partner with Zoom, we had that in place so that everyone at the university had an account. So faculty, staff, and students. So we were really well placed and fortunate that we had that already, and that some folks were familiar at least enough to know what Zoom was. And I know probably a lot of schools did not have that as a fallback.
What about, what do you guys kind of want to comment on in terms of the trial and error for the settings for Zoom? I think we all ran into it.
Yeah, we sure did. And I think, you know, it's interesting because even though I had familiarity with Zoom being the administrator, for a practical sense in, you know, how you want to set up your entire class, we weren't prepared for that. You know, do you have a waiting room? Do you not? Do you set up your personal meeting room and use that ID? Do you schedule? Certainly our faculty didn't want to and weren't interested in scheduling the next 5 weeks of a 4-day class. So trying to configure those things were certainly challenges. And then when we realized that there was all of this Zoom bombing going on, and isn't our terminology great now? We have social distancing and Zoom bombing. But then they came out with all of these patches and updates to try to make things more secure, because that wasn't even part of our mindset. You know, we were more interested in how can we get a faculty to know what a click is and how to, you know, look at their camera or where their camera was or even get a camera. So we had all sorts of challenges.
I think one of the things we didn't anticipate was that we would be moving through the material faster than some folks were comfortable. So we hadn't thought to initially have different levels of expertise, like a training for a novice or, you know, a beginner, and one for a more immediate or intermediate or expert type of person. I think if we could roll it back, we would have split those up and maybe even had people come to an initial session and then an intermediate session. One of the things that was nice, because we are such a small group, was that Maggie and some of the administrators set up Zoom meetings for the faculty members to hold, in which they could invite other faculty members and then try out some of the features within Zoom, so they knew before they had their first class.
We didn't have time to put together a thought process on this is the way you approach Zoom. You know, it was, we are now in the fire and what do we do?
So the faculty created their own Sakai site where they would post helpful hints and tips. I also had access to that. And so whenever we did create a video, I would post our videos there. And so it was a kind of a resource page with, you know, documentation and information on using Zoom. And it was also helpful for then the faculty to communicate with themselves about, okay, this is what I've done in my class, and this is how I was able to do breakout sessions, you know, within the Zoom meeting, and or polling or whatever. Yeah.
That becomes such a teachable moment for them, not only to learn a teaching tool, technological teaching tool, but also to see it from not only their perspective, but from the students' perspective. What are the students looking at when they're coming in? And I think that's really important for them to know going into teaching a course online is how does this look from the outside looking in, from a student's perspective. So hopefully they learn some valuable skills during that. I know that moving forward, we're going to have to help them fine tune those skills. So there's probably going to be more Zoom sessions where we're in Sakai and some of the other teaching tools trying to suss some of those problems out.
I think we now are starting to have the conversation of, well, what do we do in the fall?
Sure. Let's just say moving forward, I think that it should be apparent that faculty members need to be able to use these sorts of tools in order to teach their courses moving forward in an asynchronous manner, where they can use them outside of the class, use those tools within Sakai, and have the students come to have those in-class sessions be a little bit more valuable to them now that they're using both sets. I think the important thing to realize from this is that you can't really replace the value of an in-class session, but you can enhance it with these tools, and that's what it's all about.
It's going to be a perpetual learning curve, and probably like every institution out there, Duke has, hiring freezes and they have spending caps. And so, yes, it would be wonderful to have laptops in the hands of all of the faculty so that we know what is on their device, that it's all set up, it's ready to use. But who knows how long it will be before any institution is financially solvent enough to be able to put those things into the hands of the faculty. So we're going to have to cobble together with what we have.
So any other kind of thoughts about the BeforeTimes or the AfterPlague and all of this Mad Maxing beyond Zoomadrome? Because I feel like we are kind of in this weird, almost apocalyptic like rebuild.
Are we experts yet? I mean,
Right.
we feel like we are media services as academic technologies that I would say we're not even complete experts in it. I hate to say that, but there were things that we didn't know going into this pandemic. And I think there might be a misconception that now that I've used Zoom for the last 4 or 5 weeks of my class, I am now a Zoom expert. Who knows? I mean, who knows what it's going to look like?
Yeah, things will definitely be different. Any parting words, Deb?
Well, I think as my background indicates, we are all boldly going where we haven't been before. Even if you had some sort of distance learning program, it wasn't your entire law school. And, training the faculty in technology is one thing, but the human element is entirely different. And so I think, patience is definitely going to be key. We're all going to have to take a step back, and even though we've gotten things in place, in the short term, we're going to have to sort of reformulate what we do in the long term and how we can both help the students and the faculty come to a more normalized approach where we're all getting sort of what we need, but realizing that it's not going to be the same as it was before.
Definitely weird and exciting times.
Yeah.